You're about to send a text message, it's already written. Your thumb hovers over the send button, but then you read it again. Does this sound weird? Will they think I'm trying too hard? Maybe I should delete this part. Actually, maybe I shouldn't send it at all. Or you're in a meeting and you have something to say, something actually valuable, but the words stay locked in your throat because the moment you speak, everyone will turn and look at you. And what if what you say isn't smart enough, isn't right enough, isn't enough? So you stay quiet again. And later, alone, you replay the moment on loop, convinced everyone noticed your silence and judged you for it anyway. Here's the question nobody asks. What if the person judging you the hardest isn't in that room at all? What you're experiencing has a name. Psychologists call it fear of negative evaluation, and it sits at the heart of social anxiety. You are not broken. You are not overly sensitive. You are part of a massive, mostly silent majority. Studies suggest that social anxiety affects around 12% of adults at some point in their lives, but the fear of judgment, that's nearly universal. We live in a world where every opinion can be screenshotted, every mistake can go viral, every version of you can be compared to everyone else's highlight reel. Your fear isn't irrational. It's your mind trying to protect you in an environment that feels like a stage with no exit. And if you've ever felt paralyzed by the thought of what others think of you, I need you to know this. You are not weak for feeling this way. You're human. This fear is ancient. Long before social media, before job interviews, before high school cafeterias, your ancestors survived because they stayed inside the tribe. Being rejected by your group didn't just mean loneliness, it meant death. No protection, no resources, no survival. So your brain evolved a hypersensitive alarm system designed to detect even the possibility of social rejection. That alarm is still here, still firing, even though being judged at work won't actually kill you. The psychologist Mark Leary called this the sociometer theory, the idea that your self-esteem functions like a gauge, constantly measuring how accepted you are by others. When you sense disapproval, that gauge drops, and your nervous system floods with the same distress signals it would send if you were in physical danger. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman found that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Your fear of judgment isn't just emotional, it's neurological. It's your brain treating a critical comment like a threat to your survival. And here's the part that breaks my heart. Most of the time, this fear doesn't start with strangers. It starts early. Maybe you had a parent whose love felt conditional. Maybe you were bullied. Maybe you learned that being yourself led to punishment, so you began performing a version of you that felt safer. That performance became a prison, and now, even when no one's watching, you still feel watched. Let me show you how this fear operates undercover, disguised as personality traits you might not even question. First, you become invisible on purpose. You don't share your art, your writing, your ideas, your real thoughts. Because if you never put yourself out there, you can never be criticized. You tell yourself you're just private, just humble, just not the type to seek attention. But what's really happening is this. You're protecting a version of yourself that exists only in potential. As long as no one sees the real you can't be rejected. You've traded visibility for safety, but the cost is that no one actually knows you. Second, you perform perfection. You spend hours on an email that should take 5 minutes. You rehearse casual conversations. You agonize over every photo, every word, every gesture. Because if you can just get it perfect, then maybe, finally, you'll be safe from judgment. But what's really happening is this. You've made yourself judge, jury, and executioner. You're doing to yourself what you're afraid others will do, except you're doing it constantly, preemptively, exhaustively. The fear of being judged has turned into a full-time job of judging yourself. And third, you overcompensate with aggression or withdrawal. Maybe you judge others first, tearing them down before they can do it to you. Maybe you mock the exact things you're insecure about. Or maybe you disappear entirely. You cancel plans. You ghost conversations. You numb out. Because if you're not present, you can't be evaluated. What's really happening is this. The fear has convinced you that connection is dangerous, so you've chosen isolation. You've become unreachable, and you've told yourself it's a choice. But really, it's a cage. Here's what will change everything if you let it sink in. The people most imprisoned by the fear of judgment are often the most self-aware empathetic, and conscientious people alive. This fear doesn't target the careless or the cruel. It targets people who care deeply about how their presence affects others. It targets people with rich inner worlds, people who notice subtleties, people who reflect. If you struggle with this fear, it's not because you're defective. It's often because you're deeply attuned. But here's the trap. That same attunement makes you assume everyone else is watching you as closely as you watch yourself. You think people are analyzing your every word, remembering your every mistake, keeping score, but they're not. They're too busy worrying about how they're being judged. The spotlight you feel, it's not real. It's a spotlight you're shining on yourself, and you've mistaken it for everyone else's gaze. And here's the most liberating truth. Most people aren't thinking about you at all. Not because you don't matter, but because they're the main characters in their own stories, just like you are in yours. The judgment you fear is often just a projection of the judgment you're already inflicting on yourself. So what is this fear actually protecting? What's underneath it? Often, it's this, a belief that your worth is conditional, that you're only valuable if you're liked, if you're impressive, if you're flawless. Somewhere along the way, you learned that love and belonging had to be earned, and now you're exhausted from earning. This fear is a messenger. It's saying, I don't feel safe being myself. It's saying, I don't trust that I'm enough as I am. And beneath that, there's often a younger version of you who's still waiting for permission to exist without apology. The fear isn't the enemy. The fear is a guard standing in front of a wound that never fully healed. And when you start to see it that way, not as a flaw, but as a protector doing its best with outdated information, something softens. You don't have to fight the fear. You have to update it. You have to teach it gently that you're not that small anymore. That rejection won't destroy you, that you can be seen and still be safe. This is the work. Not erasing the fear, but meeting it with compassion and showing it a different way. So what do you actually do with this? Here are 3 shifts that create a real change. First, the next time you feel that familiar grip of fear before speaking or sharing something, pause and ask yourself, whose voice am I really hearing right now? Often, the judgment you're afraid of is an echo of an old voice, a parent, a bully, a younger version of yourself. Name it. Say, this is my dad's voice, or this is middle school me. That simple act of identification breaks the spell. It reminds you that the fear is historical, not factual. Second, practice micro-exposure to being seen. You don't have to post something vulnerable to 1 million people. Start smaller. Share one real thought in a group chat. Speak up once in a meeting, even if your voice shakes. Let someone see you before you're perfect. The goal isn't to eliminate the fear, it's to prove to yourself that you can survive being judged and still be okay. Each small act of visibility teaches your nervous system that being seen isn't fatal. And third, flip the script. Instead of asking, what will they think of me? Ask, what do I think of me? Your opinion of yourself is the only one you carry 24/7. When you make your own approval, the priority, the weight of everyone else's gaze starts to lift. You stop performing and start existing. And that, more than anything, is what sets you free. And if you're still watching this, it means some part of you is ready to stop living in that invisible courtroom where you're always on trial. The fear of judgment doesn't disappear overnight, but awareness, just the act of seeing it clearly, changes everything. You start to notice when it's driving. You start to choose differently. You start to remember that you are not your fear. You're the person learning to live alongside it without letting it write your story. So I want to leave you with this question. What would you do if you knew, with absolute certainty, that no one's judgment could touch the truth of who you are? Think about it, and if you're brave enough, tell me in the comments.